Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. This is Bishop Vanessa Brown, and I am your host and moderator for this evening. We are happy to have you here at Beyond the Gatekeepers. So glad that you are able to join us. We want to welcome our Facebook Live audience as well as our YouTube audience and our Twitter audience. All of those of you that are going to come in to this room on tonight, and we're asking you to do us one great big favor and make sure that you are sharing this particular conversation on this evening. We're so glad to have you here and for you to be present with us on this evening. Before we begin the show tonight, and before we even shout out where people are from, as you are sharing and letting other people know, we want to take a few moments to talk about, or actually, we don't even have to talk about it, but to pray for the city of Baltimore. We want to pray for those students at Morgan State University who were shot and injured. No one was killed, and we're so glad to know that. The school was on lockdown late last night, and homecoming has been canceled. And so we want to send our prayers out for all of the students, for all of the faculty, all of the parents that may have been traumatized or are traumatized by this particular experience. They have not caught anyone yet, and we want to make sure that we do that. Want to also, our nation is in trouble. Our government is in trouble. We've seen it with our own eyes. We've borne witness to what we see, the chaos that is happening in Congress, right? And so that chaos has been going on for a long time now. It is just not happening now. And so we want to pray for Congress that everyone can get themselves together, and the Republicans get themselves together, the Democrats can get themselves together and strategize, and all that are a part of making this nation work and move forward. We are glad that they have averted a shutdown, at least for the next 40 some odd days. But we're hoping that this nation can really fight for the oppressed. Really fight for equity, fight for justice, fight for women, fight for our LGBTQI community. And if they are able to do that, then they would have the backing and support. But because they cannot find common ground on almost anything, it has become a nightmare in Congress. That's a whole nother episode that we can actually talk about at a different time. So y'all shout out. Tell us where you are calling from. I'm not calling from, where you are watching from, whatever platform you're watching on. I see you, Albert Reed. Thank you, Colleen, Texas. Chuck Hunt, thank you for being here from Monroe, Louisiana. We appreciate you so much. Who else do I see here? Sean Jenkins, thank you from Atlanta. We appreciate you coming in the room. Herbert S. Jones, thank you from Boston, Massachusetts. Of course, Bishop Sonia Williams, thank you again from Atlanta for supporting us. James Stewart, thank you for being here. Chicago, Illinois. We got people from everywhere. Rebecca Brown, thank you for being here. Checking in from Arizona. Sherry James, Centers for Spiritual Living in Reno, Nevada. Thank you for being here, Sherry. So glad. Rim Atlanta's in the house. Again, Darlene Pittman Connell, thank you for being here. Queens, New York. Renee Vickers, thank you for being here. So we appreciate you. Elder Sharon Gill, thank you for being here. Pennsylvania is in the house. M.L. Hagler, thank you for being here. Morgan State and the nation. Yes, indeed. Maria Harris, thank you. Joining us from YouTube. We appreciate you so much. From Jersey. Covington, Georgia is in the house. Avis E. Williams. Thank you. Apostle Jabari Douglas is here out of the Maryland, D.C. area. We're so glad to have the saints on, and we want to have this conversation, and we want to be able to see your faces on tonight, commenting, and we have a great guest on tonight that's going to be with us. We want to say that Bishop Flunder will not be able to join us on this evening. She is traveling, but certainly we know that we can go on with this conversation, and we know that we have the support of all of those. I see you, Bishop Levi Richards. Thank you for joining us on tonight. We appreciate you so much. And we want to make sure that you all are sharing this conversation. I see the numbers are rising. We appreciate you. I see you, Minister Sandy Hudson. I want to make sure that I catch everybody that is joining us from California. We appreciate you here on tonight. New York City is in the house. Harlem is here. We appreciate you, Bishop Levi. All of the people that are joining in on tonight for this great conversation. And again, I ask if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter, or if you are on Facebook. And remember, we're on two pages. We're on Beyond the Gatekeepers page, and we're on Bishop Flunder's page. I see you, Dinah Chapman. Thank you for joining us from Dublin, California. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Paris, California is also in the house on tonight. We appreciate you all for joining us. And we're going to get moving because we know that the hour is moving quickly. And so we have a great, great person here with us tonight in the person of Reverend Dr. Courtney Pace, PhD. She is the Prathia Hall Scholar in Residence of Social Justice History for Equity for Women in the Church. And she has written a fantastic book called Freedom Faith, The Womanist Vision of Prathia Hall. And I need us to really, really make sure that we're going to get this book. I'm going to start talking about getting the book right now before she even say a word. I want us to make sure that we can purchase this book. I see you, Bishop Joseph Devlin. Thank you for being here with us. I see you, Colette Walker from St. Louis, already here, and T. Mark. Thank you all for joining us. Freedom Faith, The Womanist Vision of Prathia Hall by Dr. Courtney Pace. I want you all to make sure that you purchase this book. Pastor Sue is going to make sure that she puts that down in all the comment sections. And then, of course, at the end of the evening, because Dr. Courtney Pace has been so gracious to us, she has decided that she's going to allow us to give away a book on tonight. So there's going to be a free book giveaway. All you have to do is type the hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, and you can win that book. And so you all can do it at any time. And we are just excited to be here. Dr. Courtney Pace, hello.
Hello, Bishop Brown. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you.
And welcome. And so do me a favor. I want you to give, because you do so much. You're not just doing, I want you to give another introduction better than what I just gave you.
Well, glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Like so many of you, I just follow how the Lord leads, and it takes me quite a few places, often at the same time. I chair the clergy board for Planned Parenthood of Tennessee in North Mississippi, which is very difficult and dangerous work, but we want to make sure that people get the care that they need. I also, you listed my title, Through Equity for Women in the Church. We are an interracial ecumenical organization seeking to promote access to theological education and job placement for women in ministry, and seeking out equal pay for women in ministry as well. So I have the book Freedom Faith, and then I also had the opportunity to publish Dr. Hall's papers in Beyond Eden, the collected essays and sermons of Dr. Hall. So I quote her work quite a bit in Freedom Faith, but Beyond Eden gives readers a chance to see her work together, the way that she put it, her flow. And I'm just really grateful for that opportunity. I'm also married. I have 2 children. I'm a figure skater. Quite a few things.
I read that. I said I've read that is one of your things, that you really like to figure skate. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much. And you brought me to the place that I need to be, because through your introduction, you talked about what you do. And so I believe that we want to hear tonight, how did you come to write about Dr. Prathia Hall? But before you do that, I don't want to assume that our audience knows who she is. And so tell us who she is first.
Absolutely. So if you don't already know the name Reverend Dr. Prathia Hall, this is an opportunity for you. Dr. Hall was an activist in the civil rights movement. She was a leader in SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You've probably heard of people like John Lewis, Jim Foreman, Stokely Carmichael, but you may not know that she was in as high a leadership position as they were, organizing movements on the ground in Southwest Georgia. She was leading the Selma Project. She was organizing all of civil rights activism in Atlanta in the 1960s. Just a critical organizer and strategist for the civil rights movement. And then afterwards, she went into theological education. She did her studies at Princeton Seminary and became a pillar of Black churches. Dr. Renita Weems calls her a proto-womanist. She was modeling womanist prophetic preaching before Alice Walker gave us that language. She was modeling intersectionality before Kimberly Crenshaw gave us that language. And so she blended the absolute best of the Black preaching tradition with this womanist prophetic power, and really created a new way to preach that has continued to captivate hearers since her time. She was very modest, which is why I think she wasn't seeking a lot of acclaim for what she did, but there are very few places in the world we can go where her influence hasn't made something better, more organized, more resourced. If you talk to Black clergy women who were in theological education in the 90s and early 2000s, odds are she was a mentor to them, or a mentor to their mentor. She was finding scholarship money. She was helping people find job placement, and also an advocate for local legislation, particularly that was impacting young communities, young Black people. The thing most people find out about Dr. Hall, that's their entry point, is that she actually coined the term "I have a dream."
Yes.
In the summer of 1962, and remember the March on Washington was 1963. In the summer of 1962, she was in Southwest Georgia, and in the month of September, there were 4 Black churches that were burned as white supremacists backlash to their support of the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dr. King came in town for a prayer vigil at Mount Olive Baptist Church in Sasser, Georgia. And it's at that vigil where Hall used "I have a dream" as a repetition device in her prayer. The New York Times quoted large sections of her prayer, didn't quote anything King said at the same event. And Dr. Hall and Dr. King were friends. That he was in seminary at Philadelphia at the same time she was in college. They knew each other. And so to catch up while he was in town, she rode in the car to the airport with him. And that's where he asked her, "Hey, I like that. Do you mind if I start using that?" And that speaks a lot. Preachers appropriate all the time. It's very rare for a preacher to ask, "May I use the thing you created?" So I think that shows his respect for her as a preaching colleague. But he started using it in November of 1962. And King referred to Hall as the one platform speaker I prefer not to follow.
Not to follow. Now,
Yes.
I read that. He didn't want to follow her because she could preach and
Yes.
she could pray.
Yes.
She was serious and a Baptist preacher,
Yes.
but you could feel the power of God.
And what was interesting when I was talking to civil rights colleagues of hers, even those who weren't practicing any kind of religion said exactly that, Bishop Brown, that you could feel the power of God in her voice, and the whole room was stirred when she was speaking. There was something special about her voice and the way that it helped people connect to God's voice.
I read something that she said, and she said, "I stood in the authenticity of me being Black, preacher, Baptist, woman." She said, "For the same God who made me a preacher made me a woman, and I am convinced that God was not confused on either account."
Yes.
Powerful, powerful, powerful woman of God who, because many people don't know about her, is pretty much unsung, right?
Yes.
But she was a barrier breaker.
Absolutely. When I started the work, there was very little available about her. There were a couple of blog posts, but nothing from a credible source. And so, to answer your earlier question, when you do a PhD, you know broadly what discipline you want to study, but you have to tailor your topic down to something very specific so you can go deep on that subject. I wanted to study the intersection of race and gender. And at the recommendation of a homiletics professor from Emory, I decided to study Dr. Hall. One, because I was certain of her significance and that it was worth someone's academic life to tell her story. But I also think her story is this wonderful opportunity to look at race, gender, class, ability in the 20th century, to look at not only the movement for human rights, but also the Black church, religion in America broadly. All of those different planes appear in her story. And so that's where it started. I had no idea when I started how much she would come to mean to me personally. I didn't have the opportunity to meet her, but no single person's voice has shaped me more than hers. I essentially spent a decade and a half listening to her preaching, reading every word she ever wrote and kept, thinking about what various aspects of her life might be, talking to her friends and family and colleagues, and trying to put together all of these disconnected pieces to tell her story. And I found someone who continues to be a model and mentor for me, even as she's gone to be with the ancestors.
Indeed. Reverend Naomi, we see you here. Welcome. Pastor Siegfried Benton, we say welcome to you. Deacon Taylor, we say welcome to you. Thank you all for joining. If you're just tuning in, we are here. This is Beyond the Gatekeepers, current events through a theological and justice-informed lens. And I am here with Dr. Courtney Pace. the author of Freedom Faith, The Womanist Vision of Prathia Hall by Dr. Courtney Pace. And we are giving away a book tonight. And so you can type hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers in order to win. But we also have, and Pastor Sue has already put it in the chat, ways in which you can purchase the book. And so you can go to purchase the book by going to ugapress.org, and you can use a particular code. So I want you all to look at that code that Pastor Sue has placed down and pinned so you can see it, and you can get 30% off of the book if you order from there, or you can order directly from Amazon. It is your choice. I see you, Pastor Erica. Welcome. And I see you, Gigi. Thank you for being here on Beyond the Gatekeepers. So back to this writing, this deep work. First of all, I must say that she put her life on the line.
Yes.
Every single day, she put her life on the line. One of the first women leaders of the SNCC, correct?
Yes, there were some others, but they mostly led in an administrative capacity. She was leading as a strategist, as an on-the-ground organizer. Charles Sherrod was the official leader of the Southwest Georgia Project, but she functioned very much as a co-leader. And by 1963, she was the leader of the work in Selma. And by 1964, she was leading work in Atlanta. There were several civil rights organizations that were working in Atlanta, and she was organizing how all of them were going to collaborate together.
So I know that you could parallel her life's work to some of the experiences that even in present day, we find women going through in churches, right? Being
Yes.
pastors, being senior leaders, trying to get ordained, the whole process. Lots of racism, lots of sexism, lots of gender bias, and so with that, we can actually use her work, right, to help us move forward, even in the Black church. Because although she was talking to the Black church, I believe she was talking to everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She felt a strong calling to stay within the Black Baptist tradition, to speak prophetically as an insider. But you're absolutely right that the scope of her message extends to anyone who would listen. If you know more about her personal struggles, particularly the details of her divorce and trying to be in theological education while working with a cross state lines commute as a single mother, you find where she references those particular kinds of pain and grief in her sermons. But she was so careful about it. If you didn't know her story, you wouldn't automatically know that's what she's saying. But if it's your story, you recognize that vulnerability. And once you know hers, you certainly do. She, her daughter died at 26. And so she preaches about the incomprehensible pain of losing a child and her relationship with her grandson. And one of the things that I find so powerful about her story is, some of us, when we go through something traumatic, we talk about it in a very public way. She kept it to herself because she was afraid that people would assume she was not capable of her calling if they knew what all personal struggles she was juggling. And it was later in her life that she said, I have to tell the whole truth. I have to tell all of it. I'm not going to live in shame, recognizing she hadn't done anything wrong. She had been faithful from one call to the next. And if any of you are going through any kind of emotional, physical, spiritual abuse, if you're juggling the difficulty of parenting with a partner or without, in school, while you're working, commuting, caring for aging parents, caring for extended family, I think you'll find such power and healing in her work.
She has, Dr. Courtney, a sermon called When Faith Trembles.
Yes.
When Faith Trembles. And she says in that particular sermon, faith is not faith until it is tested in the crucible of struggle and the fiery trials of life. So right there with that particular statement, you could tell that she had been through something. You could tell that she had had some experiences. I did read somewhere about the death of her daughter.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that she had a divorce. Like, those are difficult things in life. Those are the vicissitudes of life. Those are the things that come to press us down. But she found a way to always bounce back.
Absolutely. She also had a chronic back injury that
From a
impacted her
car accident or
mobility.
something. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And so even while she has such a grueling physical schedule of preaching in Philadelphia, studying in New Jersey, living in Roosevelt, New York, she's doing all of that with a physical disability. And she's doing it as a single parent. And she got a lot of criticism from the academy about how busy she was. You know, she was working at a seminary, but she was somewhat of a public figure. She had speaking engagements most weeks. One way to look at it is, you know, we could say, well, if you have a job, you should stay where you are. Another way to look at it is that people don't pay women a living wage. And so yes, she followed her call to preach, but she also needed the resources to provide for herself and her family at great cost to her personal health and well-being to do that. And I know so many of us are working multiple jobs, burning the candle on all fronts, and it is killing us.
Yes.
And I think you find that struggle of wanting wellness, wanting wholeness, but also understanding the times call for faithful proclamation even when it's hard, and the times are calling perhaps more than any of us has to offer due to the limits of our bodies and our souls.
And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard so many women say, I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. My plate is full. I'm tired. I'm depressed. I'm tired. So many times, so many ways in which I've heard this through text, through Facebook posts, through people calling me directly, how tired people are from, and I say people, but I'm particularly talking about women,
Mm-hmm.
right? From working, from preaching, from being everything that they need to be to community, to their family, and they're just tired, right? And so, I was wondering when I was reading, you know, did she have an opportunity to even ever have a break? Did she ever
She did
have the opportunity?
she did have a few. She loved playing with her grandson Michael. That was Simone's son.
Hmm.
And when she finished her dissertation, she took a trip to Africa. She took several family members with her, and that was a very meaningful experience for her. She didn't get much opportunity to rest, but she did spend time with her family. Um, Towards the end of her career, she finally had a stable position that paid her well enough that she didn't have to be worried about money all the time, and she was immediately diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
And so even once you work and work and work thinking I'm going to get to a place of stability, and she did that against all the odds. She did that just in time to be diagnosed with a fatal illness. And even as she was dying of cancer, she recognized that bone marrow matches are very difficult for Black people because of their mixed ancestry.
Hmm.
And and we also recognize there is good reason to be suspicious of the medical field. She worked and worked and worked to encourage people to get on the registry, and the kind of cancer she had is now considered treatable, largely because of the work she did raising awareness and inviting people to be part of saving lives.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to open the opportunity for those of you that want to ask questions. Many of you already know about Prathia Hall. If you want to ask a question as it relates to this book, I want you to put down the word question first, and so that we all know that you are asking a question. We invite you to post it now so that you write the word question before so it can be easily seen. So we want to make sure that you're doing that. So Dr. Courtney Pace, I have another question for you. And this question is, how does her work, her life's work, inform who you are and what you do?
I think about that all the time. And so I pause, just understanding the gravity of that question and its answer. While I was in grad school, I went through a divorce and was a single mother working in a job search. And I found it was like she was that voice telling me it was going to be okay, that we were going to get through it together, because I could look at so many foremothers who had made the path for me. And as I've found my own voice as a scholar, as a preacher, I continually hear her challenge that all of us are responsible for every form of oppression. And none of us, she loved the Ella Baker quote, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Yes.
That sense of responsibility, that whatever it is I feel called to do, it has to include liberation for those who are oppressed. It has to include making people aware of that responsibility and opportunity to be part of what God is doing. And I think she was very, very bold, but very right when she said, when we fail to create liberation, we fail to be the church. When what we do is disconnected from liberation, it's not the church of God. And those words were very difficult to hear, and I think a lot of people chose to ignore them. But she's right. If that's what we're called to do, I'm thinking of Isaiah 61 and Jesus is called to ministry in Luke 4, where he said, I came to give sight to the blind, freedom to the oppressed. That is the call. And if what we're doing isn't that, it is what it is, but it's not the work of the gospel.
Thank you for that. We have a question on the floor. Reverend Naomi is asking, do we know how Hall felt about MLK's use of her dream prayer language in his own speeches and sermons?
We do know how she felt. She was happy to give him permission to start using the phrase. She actually was with him. They spoke together in Chicago the night before the March on Washington. She watched on TV because she couldn't get to DC. And when asked point blank, did you say this first? Often she would put her head down and excuse herself from the room. She was not, it was hard for her to take credit for it. For two reasons. One, I don't think she was the kind of person who wanted, it wasn't about her. It was always about what God was doing. And second, there's been a lot of tension within and about the legacy of Dr. King, about whether the acclaim he has received is about whether his legacy might perhaps be inflated. Dr. Hall had such a strong respect for Dr. King. She didn't want to be part of anything that was discrediting him or could be used to diminish the significance of his legacy. And so the way she would answer the question is, I can't take credit for what he's done with the phrase.
Powerful. Very, very powerful. And like Reverend Naomi, I have always thought that he actually stole it from her. So I am glad to know that he actually got consent and they actually talked about it and that she was able to basically, cover him and say, listen, you know what? It is my phrase, but it's okay. And he probably could have taken it. I think I read somewhere else that she said that he probably did more with it than she could have ever done. So we definitely appreciate that. We have another question by M.L. Hagler. He says, in light of some in our society who are bent on the erasure of certain books related to Black people's history, are you concerned in regards to either Beyond Eden or Freedom Faith being banned from libraries or schools?
It's certainly possible. To my knowledge, the book hasn't been on a list. I know as a scholar, I've been on some lists that have been used to intimidate those of us who speak up for truth and liberation. The book is very clear that racism is wrong, sexism is wrong, heteronormativity is wrong, classism is wrong. That is her message. That is the truth. And that's what I've portrayed in the books. The books are unashamedly pro-womanist. I recognize I cannot be a womanist because I'm writing from my context as a white scholar. What I've done is use womanist voices as my source. There is more than enough within the community of womanist voices to write 2 whole books. We don't have to bring in other kinds of scholars to have books and books and books of things to say. And, I don't imagine the kind of places that would ban the book have it to begin with. But at the same time, if that were to happen, it's not going to change my public message about its contents in the same way that so many of us already face threats sometimes to our physical safety because of what we say, what we do, the spaces we occupy, but it's part of the call.
You may not be able to call yourself womanist, but you have womanist ways. You working with this whole abortion clinic, this thing that you're doing down in North Mississippi, that's very dangerous. That's some dangerous work. And I want to commend you for keeping the door open, the window open, the rooftop open for women who will need to do this, will need to go for whatever reason. They need to get to where they need to get to. And I just want to tell you, thank you for that. Very, very powerful. Yes, Dr. Martha Simmons says Courtney Pace is such a wonderful scholar and she does have womanist ways. You do.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. You have been a tremendous mentor and support to me as well. And I want to affirm you, the work you do day after day after day on social media, connecting, educating, affirming. I'm just grateful to be a part of it.
Do you think that Dr. Prathia Hall's work and what she has done, right? Because what I believe that what she's done is still living, is still alive, is still
Absolutely.
vibrant, is still in the earth, right? Do you think that we could use more? And of course, I know your answer is going to be yes, but that we could use more Prathia Halls in the world?
Yes. And there are some among us who are embodying the scholar, preacher, pastor. Those are 3 separate professions, and it's very rare to find someone who does all 3 well.
Absolutely.
And Prathia Hall did all 3 well, which is just exceptional. There are, and I'm thinking of women like Gina Stewart, Martha Simmons, Gabby Cujo Wilkes, Melva Sampson, Camila Hall Sharp. I'm thinking of Irie Session, Verzola Law, who are doing that work and who aren't doing it for the public acclaim and aren't doing it for the adrenaline rush. They're doing it because they love people. They love God's people and they want people to be free. And it's come at great cost to them. I'm thinking of Reverend Dr. Ebony Marshall Turman. I know many of us have been standing in the gap for her this week. This is real work.
And when I read her post, I began to think about your book. I begin to and how this is, she could actually the church, no, I won't say the name, could actually benefit from reading this book.
Absolutely. And did you know Hall was a candidate for a lot of pulpits, but never received an offer for any other church than Mount Sharon, which was the church her father planted in North Philadelphia?
Well, let's talk about that. Talk about that, because I think that that's crucial to who she was.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, she it's not that she was just trying to advance to a more prestigious pulpit. It's that she was that profound of a leader. And pulpit committees would perhaps invite her to be a guest speaker for Women's Day, or they would have her be a candidate for their pastor search, but never a finalist. And I think it was to satisfy their own sense of, well, look, it was an equitable search and we chose the most qualified candidate. But I'm not sure that's right. I'm just not sure who you find that's more qualified than these women we've lifted up in this conversation tonight. And
absolutely.
And that still happens. In fact, I won't name the denomination, but there's a denomination that will give Pulpit Supply travel support to have a woman as one of the 3 finalists. But all it does is satisfy that checkbox. It doesn't actually help them understand why they should recognize sexism within themselves and purge themselves of that evil. It's incompatible with the gospel of Christ to perpetrate sexism and blame it on God. That's from Hall.
Well, one of the things that I know that she said was that the Black church needs to look at their own self.
Mm-hmm.
And needed to clean up their own business, because she realized that the Black church was in trouble. So the patriarchy was not just about what was outside, but was also what was inside the church. All of the things that were happening inside the church. And perhaps that is why they tried to muzzle,
Yes,
right, her words, the things that she spoke out, because of the fact that she knew that all of these things that we talk about, these isms, these schisms, this, all of this is outside, but she also knew it was inside the church.
right. She hit respectability politics head on, and she said, Black heritage does not have this. This is learned behavior from white supremacist patriarchy, and it has no business in the authentic gospel of God. And I think it cost her her career because people didn't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet she continued to be faithful. She continued to speak the truth. And many of us find ourselves in the same situation where people are trying to say what God is calling them to do within the church, and the church won't hear them, so they go outside the church. I'm even thinking of Black Lives Matter. Churches didn't want to talk about that, and so that movement has grown up in a secular space, but perhaps that's where God has the most room to move among the people. The box has come off outside the walls of the church, and it's such, there's so much lost. There's so much lost, and one of the things that I think womanism has said that has made the world a truer place is that each one of us bears a piece of the image of God, and we can't know God unless we listen to how God speaks through each of us. So if we eliminate Black women from the pulpit, we are missing who God is and how God is active in the world. If we keep queer people out of the pulpit, we are missing something about God that only that embodiment can understand. Yes. And you know, the academy will talk about legitimate knowledge, valid knowledge, but some of us know in our bodies, and we didn't read it, we know it. It was given to us, it's part of us. And turning that hierarchy upside down about what's true and who has the right and the ability to speak it. Hall modeled that beautifully. And did you know, when she was doing her graduate work, she tried to cite Black women in her work in the 80s and was told that that was not a valid academic source, and to turn to the canon of Western European men. So if you read her early stuff and you're like, why does she talk about Heidegger so much? She was forced to. But yet she found ways in her preaching, in some of the non-academic publishing that she did, to show there's plenty to say without a single Western European man as a reference. There is plenty to say just from the witness of Black women.
Dr. Pace, you, first of all, very powerful what you just said. You preaching. You have had to pay a price for writing this book as a white woman. I know that you did. You don't have to tell me. I know you had to pay a price. In what ways has writing these two books affected you, affected your life, affected your career, your work? Because you grew up Southern Baptist.
I did, and it is. I'm grateful that no matter where we come from, it doesn't define our future. You know, we don't choose the tradition of our parents, but as we are exposed to truth, we move toward it. And for me, that meant completely leaving the denomination of my origin and seeking truer spaces. And I would say my experience writing the book has been the same way. There has been understandable skepticism. And the way you do the work is you model what it says, which is, I understand why you may not trust me. And I will get to know you for however long you need in order for us to do this together. And if that never happens, I will respect that boundary. There are some scholars and members of the clergy who were excited anybody was working on Hall and were very quick to offer support and encouragement. And there were those who were, and some who continue to be reticent. And that's where I have to model understanding. I understand why you would not trust a white woman. And it is inappropriate for me to ask someone to set down that very real and valid scar, wound, pain. So I'm grateful to those who have welcomed me into this space. I understand I'm a guest. I also understand that all of our liberation is bound up together, and patriarchy hurts all of us. It hurts those who are perpetuating it. It hurts those who are being perpetuated on. It hurts those who have learned within themselves to oppress themselves. Hall called that pathologized depression, where we internalize those messages of inferiority and dehumanization to where we do it to ourselves. And so I just tried to move it based on Hall's leadership and letting her voice be the primary spiritual formation for me. I've tried to follow where I sense openness to the work and show reverent respect for where it might not be welcome. I understand.
Thank you for that. I want to let everybody know you're watching Beyond the Gatekeepers, current events through a theological and justice-informed lens. I'm here with Dr. Courtney Pace. I'm so glad to be with her tonight, and we're going to invite you to put your question down if you have a question, but we're also going to invite you to purchase the book. All of the information that Dr. Courtney Pace has given about freedom, faith, the womanist vision of Prathia Hall. This is the reason why you want to get this book, right? And so I invite you, I encourage you to purchase the book. You can purchase it on Amazon. There's also another link where you can purchase it directly from the publisher and get 30% off. It might equal out to the same thing, but you can figure it out. I want to say thank you to Cheryl Robinson for being on tonight. St. Louis, we thank you for being here, as well as Lee Hall Perkins. We've seen you all come in the room. Of course, we've already acknowledged Dr. Martha Simmons for being on as well. And so I want to invite you all to make sure that you put your question down. This is a very powerful book. And I believe that there are some remedies that can help us to unshackle ourselves from and I see you, Reverend Karen Coleman for Boston, from this patriarchy, right? And this sexism and this gender bias and all of these things that we are still experiencing. She was experiencing in the 80s, and here we are 30 some odd years later, right? Or 40 some odd years later with the same 40 some odd years later with the same nonsense still going on in our churches. I speak about the Black church, but I'm sure it's going on in white churches too, and other denominations as well, all across America. And there is something that we have to do to divest ourselves of it. We see it happening in our country. It is playing out right now, right in our country. We see the misogynist ways. We see what is happening in our pulpits every week. Yes, Dr. Martha Simmons says every preacher should own this book, especially Black women and men. Did you hear that? Every preacher should own this book, especially Black women and men. I want you all to make sure that you purchase the book. Of course, we will have the opportunity before the evening is over to make sure that you win a book. We're only giving away one book. There's a free book giveaway. Just type the hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, and you will find out how you can win a chance to win that book. Colette Walker says, this conversation has helped me to know there are real allies among us who are doing the work. Indeed, there are real allies, and Dr. Courtney Pace is an ally, and it's going to take all of us to not just set again. Prathia Hall understood that there was a problem in the church. She understood that there was a problem outside the church, which is why she was doing civil rights work, and she had been doing it from a teenager. It was something that her parents had been doing, and that's where she got the love of it from. But she also understood that there was something going on in the church that we needed to uncover, that there was a sickness, because it is a sickness. And it's not just a sickness that men have, it's a sickness that women have too.
Absolutely. As we're talking about allies, I'm thinking about clergy who have connected with me to strategize how they can incorporate this book as a tool to have these conversations in their congregations. So I want to shout out Dr. Christopher Davis in Memphis, who has instituted an entire church history curriculum for his ministry leadership so that it trickles out. Earl Fisher has done the same thing also here in Memphis.
I've had both of them on our show before. Beautiful.
Gary Simpson, and not everybody
Yes.
in Brooklyn misses the point. Gary Simpson has been
Yes.
incredibly faithful to champion this and watch his daughter Candace, because
Yes.
there's truth coming there, and I think
Indeed.
she's going to be another one of those names that everybody stops and says, I heard God through her. And Otis Moss III. There have been several. Paris Smith, who I see is with us tonight. I'm actually going to get to break bread with him on Monday. There are so many who are recognizing this book and several others that tell the truth in ways that are easy to understand and help people connect their own experiences. Everybody has their own experience where sexism, racism, ableism, heterosexism happened to them in the church. I think when Me Too came out and we were celebrating the freedom that Tarana Burke gave us to speak, I think it was Martha Simmons who said Me Too in the church. And there were so many stories that came out. Those are the conversations we have to purge ourselves of this evil. And the part of this evil that breaks my heart the most is not just that we're doing this to each other. Mm-hmm. It's that we're blaming it on God. Mm-hmm. We're saying this is what God wants to happen in the world. And I think that's why God is raising up so many prophetic, powerful voices, because we cannot lie on God and get away with it. We cannot. We cannot. And Dr. Hall said she felt God's fist in her back saying, tell folks I'm tired of them lying on me.
Wow. Wow. Did y'all hear that? Tell folks I'm tired of God lying on me. We need to go on up to Congress, and we need to go to some of these churches and some of these places and let them know, particularly in Tennessee, where they are violating trans rights, particularly in Florida, where they're violating everybody's rights there. We need to go on and this needs to be like a what is it? T-shirt, something. We need to get it going. I'm tired of God. I'm tired of folks lying on God. Because this is not about God. This is about what folks want to do. This is about the isms and the phobias that people have in our society. It has nothing to do with God. Dr. Pace, you have been an incredible blessing to us tonight. I want you to give us something that you want us to know that's very, very important that we should all hear on tonight, based upon the book, but also based upon your current work that you're doing. I want you to give us a last line. I want to invite people while she's doing that and getting her thoughts together to make sure you put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers so you can win a copy of the book. But I also want to invite you to go and purchase the book. All right. You've already heard me say it earlier with Dr. Martha Simmons that this is a book that should be purchased for Black preachers, both men and women, wherever you are. So I know you want to win the book, but if you don't win it, make sure that you hop on down to Amazon or down to the publishing company and purchase the book. Dr. Pace.
I want to encourage you to have your eyes, ears, hearts, minds, and hands open to every single person around you. This gathering includes some incredibly accomplished people. And we've worked hard for the credentials that we have, but they do not give us exclusive access to truth or how God is moving in the world. God won't be limited by any of us. Every single person that you meet bears the image of God in some way and understands what's true from their own life experience and their own journey with God. And I think the best thing we could do to subvert hierarchy in the church and in our society is to recognize the value and wisdom and profoundness that each of us bears. Treat everyone like the beautiful gift from God that they are, and be open to how you will learn from them. Mm-hmm. Not just they will learn from you. Dr. Hall described her time in Georgia as the most formational experience for understanding freedom faith. She said she would sit on porches and talk to people, sometimes every day for weeks. They were putting their life on the line to register to vote, and she had to spend a lot of time building trust. But she said she learned the wisdom of the ages. She learned how folks had figured out how to survive Jim Crow generation after generation and continue to speak hope to their children. That's where freedom faith came from. And as we're looking, we're in a moment very much like she was in the 1960s. And I'm grateful for all the books and sermons and there's good things there, but I'm grateful for the wisdom in people, ordinary folks who know something that's going to be a part of that answer, because they get up every day and they continue to have faith and hope in what God is doing.
I love that. So powerful. Sometimes we just got to go sit on the stoop, on the porch. It's not going to happen in the pulpit. It's not going to happen at that seminar. Most of the time we preaching to the choir. Sometimes we got to go down the block or across the street and sit on that stoop. Thank you so much, Dr. Courtney Pace, for being here with us tonight. We have a commercial that we want to show. And so let us do that. Before we do that, we also want to invite you all to give. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I see you, Bishop Stefan. Thank you for joining us. Reverend Tanya as well. Darlene Pittman as well. So we appreciate you supporting us on a weekly basis. Every Wednesday we are here. By the grace of God, Bishop Flunder could not be with us on tonight. She is traveling, but we want you to support our broadcast by sending a donation via Cash App to $ TFAM Annual or to PayPal at www.paypalme/TFAM Justice. We know that we want to continue to expand this platform, and so we will do it with your help, and we appreciate what you can and will do on tonight. Thank you so much.
From the blues to hip-hop, African Americans have driven sonic innovation for more than a century. While styles have changed, there's one sound that's remained constant, a source of strength and courage, comfort and wisdom. Gospel.
That's a little bit of gospel.
Gospel music is soul. Gospel music is R&B. Gospel music is funk. It's hip-hop. Gospel music is the full spectrum in terms of its sound of black music and beyond.
Mahalia Jackson, what was special about her voice?
She believed every word she was singing, and she wanted you to believe it.
Preachers have style, right? Gospel singers have style, right?
Black style in music and preaching is similar because it allows black people to believe that they can survive a bit longer. My mother had gone to New Bethel Baptist Church. C.O. Franklin would preach and then Aretha would sing. Oh my God, if you ain't got the spirit then, you dead.
The sermon becomes the song. the song becomes the sermon.
God, we ask that you would reinvigorate somebody.
It's almost as if there's a soundtrack in a church setting.
Amen, brother.
That was beautiful. For generations, gospel music and preaching have formed the bedrock of the Black religious experience.
The sound still connects people. The sound still gathers people.
These astonishing art forms, carrying an enduring tradition, continue to evolve.
Do you think there will always be gospel music 100 years from now?
I don't see how we can thrive without gospel music.
That's right.
I say it's going to always be there forever.
Listen, as we tell the story of how a people learn to sing the Lord's song in a strange land. This is the powerful story of gospel.
And so we're excited about that because Bishop Flunder and Mother Miller are in it, as well as people from City of Refuge. We know Reverend Dr. Gabby is in it. So many people that we know are a part of this. And so we want you all to support it when it comes out in February. Right now, we're going to give away Dr. Courtney Pace's book. Remember, I'm encouraging you to go and purchase it. Only one person can win tonight. And so make sure you put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. We have it up there for you to see exactly how it's spelled. Make sure that you type it in that way. We want to give you an opportunity to do it again if you haven't done it. Right? All right. Hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. All right, Pastor Sue. Let's see who is our winner tonight. Rebecca Brown. Congratulations, Rebecca Brown. You are the winner of the book written by Dr. Courtney Pace, Prathia Hall. We're so excited that you won on tonight. I actually know who Rebecca Brown is. And let me just say, we are not related. Just in case somebody wants, we're not related. You have won the book Freedom Faith, The Womanist Vision of Prathia Hall. And so please make sure that you put your name, full name, and address inside of the Beyond the Gatekeepers chat. And we will make sure that in our inbox. And we will make sure that you receive that book. We will get it to Dr. Courtney Pace, and she will have it sent out. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We so appreciate you. We appreciate Dr. Courtney Pace. Again, she may not be able to call herself a womanist, but she's got womanist ways. I hope that you all will remember that. We celebrate your good work, Dr. Courtney Pace. We appreciate you so much. And so we invite you to come back on next week. We have Chandrika Fia coming on next week. And the title of her book is Lord, I Don't Want to Die a Christian. Lord, I don't want to die a Christian. I hope you all can join us next week. We say thank you for joining us. God bless you. Have a great evening.